Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active and off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Tom Ways. Most of you have probably heard of Tom, but let's talk about Tom. Tom not only races KOH, he is a rock crawler, an extreme skiing professional, woodcutter, tree faller, snow machine rider, but also fights bears in his spare time. Tom, great to have you on board with us and talking about your life.
Thank you, Big Rich. It's great to be here. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about my world, I guess.
Yeah, you're a busy man. It's hard to fit this in, but we got it going. So let's jump right in. And where were you born and raised?
I was born in Pennsylvania. Was born and raised in Huff's Church, Pennsylvania, which is in Berks County. My parents were both educators. My mom was a AP English teacher, and my dad was a elementary school principal, and we also had a 100-acre farm that was not a full-time farm, but we had horses and cows and pigs and chickens and mostly hay for the horses, but we baled 3 cuttings a year, and we had probably 15 acres alfalfa, and it was a 100-acre farm with a beautiful trout creek running through it, and grew up running around on my 3-wheeler and mini bike before that, and definitely gave me the ability to know the work's not done till the work's done, and some work ethic. And I got the intensity of my mom and ADD of my dad, and I got a little bit of both.
And so that sounds pretty rural if it was farm ranch life.
Yeah, definitely, Rich. Right kind of on the verge of Lancaster County. It's basically like south of Allentown, a little bit southeast of like Trexlertown, kind of in the Pennsylvania Dutch borderline, kind of the Amish area of
Right.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, when you said that Lancaster County, I know that I've driven through that area a number of times and come across the Amish carriages going down the road.
Yep. Yeah, our first tractor was a 1932 John Deere Model A flywheel start tricycle, cultivator under it. And definitely when we moved into this farm in 1979, I was 8 years old, and it's definitely a lot of work. My parents were definitely brave, and moving into a 1800 stone farmhouse that had a slate roof that needed to be replaced, and a barn that was, the roof was half caved in and had 2 feet of pigeon shit on the second floor. And it was definitely my parents' full-time job was remodeling and making that house into what it became.
And what did they do before moving out onto the farm?
We were in Bucks County before that for a little bit, and then we were in Quakertown briefly, and then from there we moved to the farm, and then that was pretty much my main upbringing was there.
Okay. And then doing the like school and all that kind of stuff, like others that I've talked to that have grown up on the farms or ranches, you probably spent more time on the ranch and the farm than you did in school.
My parents were big on education, but also encouraged me to play sports, and
Okay, good.
I was definitely trying to find what was right for me for sure. And I did a little bit of track and field, pole vaulted, and threw javelin, and played a little bit of baseball. Didn't really like it. Played football, played defensive safety, and really enjoyed that. And then skiing was really my true passion. My cousin Phil, who lived up in the Poconos, was the first person to really introduced me to skiing. And I just immediately fell in love with it and was completely obsessed with it. And that just became my sole focus. And at that time, that was really important to me, and started racing mountain bikes. There wasn't really a designated downhill mountain biking at that time, but I pretty much wanted to ski race. That was my main goal. And I met this one local guy in Pennsylvania that had some gates and gave me some videos that I could study. And I wanted to start ski racing as soon as possible. And it wasn't available as a high school sport at my public school I went to. And so I started training as much as I could. And pretty much the Keystone State Games was the first ski race I ever went to, and did well at it. And then went to try out for Green Mountain College's ski team in Poultney, Vermont, and made the team and got a scholarship to ski race for them. And next thing you know, I was training and commuting up to Killington and Pico Ski Resort and ski raced there for 4 years. And we ended up going to nationals three out of 4 years.
Nice. And what was your favorite discipline?
I always wanted to race downhill in Super G, but we didn't have that possibility. I didn't like slalom, even though I was good at it. I was definitely better at GS, but my slalom results were always pretty good too. It was a little frustrating slalom, but I always wanted to do more speed events. But I moved out to Squaw Valley. Now it's called Palisades.
Right.
I moved out to Olympic Valley in 1994, and at that time I was racing downhill mountain bikes. I was racing on the Grundig World Cup Tour and on the Northern National Tour, racing pro downhill, and came out to race the Mammoth Kamikaze and the Reebok Eliminator and the North America's Championships, which was at Squaw Valley. And also was doing the Downhill Mania Tour, which was based out of Big Bear, and came out and wasn't planning on staying. I just came out to do some races, and I had like 2 or 3 friends that I had gone to school with that had moved out here. One of them was Tom Brand, who was on the Pro Mogul Tour at the time.
Nice.
And he gave me his car to borrow, his Mazda, and I drove down to Mammoth and raced Mammoth and came back. And right before I left, I had broken my frame on my bike, and I got introduced to Greg Forsyth from Cycle Pass Bike Shop, which was on the West Shore right in Sunnyside. And he said, "Hey, you're more than welcome to build your bike here." And I basically had the frame delivered there and showed up with a backpack full of parts and put the bike together. And he walked over and he grabbed it and pulled it off the bike stand and hopped up and down on it and went out and took it for a spin around the block and came back. He's like, "You want a job?" And I was like, I wasn't planning on staying. And he's like, "Well, you got a job if you want it." So he was my first boss ever in Tahoe, and I got a place to live and a job the same day. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to stay. So I moved in with a friend of mine in Olympic Valley, and it was a pretty unique house at the time. We called it the Gravity House. It's kind of an interesting story because Red Bull started their test market in Tahoe City and in Olympic Valley. And Frank Amali, who was one of the originators of base jumping, and all these guys that were big into the bungee jumping scene at the time, which turned into base jumping, which turned into rope swinging and everything that went along with it. And the Red Bull Air Force came out of that house, and everybody else that went along with it. And it's pretty neat to see how big of an influence that the Red Bull program became in the whole global community that started, right there.
Did you know, what was his name? Paul Crandall?
I knew Paul for sure.
Okay.
Definitely. Yep. Tall Paul.
Yeah, I was introduced to him by Dustin Webster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, basically Tall Paul was a huge part of that program, and then I think he went on to Vita Water and a few other things, maybe GoPro as well. And
yep.
Basically kind of right about that same time, so early 90s, the pro scene in Squaw Valley was huge. Anybody that wanted to be pro was there, and everybody wanted to be on the cover of a ski magazine and be in a ski movie. And right about that time, Lord of the Boards was a mixed discipline series that was starting out. That was basically the beginning of skier cross, and skier X, which it turned into in X Games, became a huge deal. Eventually became even an Olympic sport now. And I started competing in skier cross because at that time, being good in traffic and enjoying downhill mountain biking, mixing in my ski racing background, it was really fun to blend that together. And a friend of mine, Greg Neblo, and I competed together. It was a team event where it was a snowboarder skier combo in the first Red Bull event, which was the Red Bull Ultra Cross that happened at Mount Rose.
Okay.
And that was the first event. I think we got second in it, and I can't remember how much money we won, but it was like really exciting at the time. And I was like, okay, I got cash. I'm immediately leaving. I'm going to Valdez, Alaska, because I want to go heli skiing.
And that was your first trip to heli skiing?
That was my first trip to go heli skiing. And at that point, I had just come back from Chamonix, France. Just spent like a month over there ski mountaineering all around Mont Blanc and off the Guida Midi. And at that point, like, my rope skills were starting to develop, and I was really getting super interested in ice climbing. Rock climbing was fun, but ice was just next level to me because it just opened up the possibilities of being able to ski and descend and climb anything. As long as I had my ice tools, my crampons, and a rope, I'd drop into anything. And that was just kind of the start of like me wanting to ski the volcanoes and the Ring of Fire and going after a bunch of different volcanoes. And then things started escalating pretty quickly after that.
So anything you could do to supercharge the adrenaline rush?
Well, it's just neat to be able to go. I mean, to go compete in X Games in skier cross was fun, but like it's nothing comparatively to like going to Alaska and seeing what the mountains have there and just the size and the scale, and then
and terrain that's been uncut.
Oh yeah, and just pioneering stuff. And at that point, there'd been a little bit of stuff done, but it wasn't a lot of it. And then there was a lot of opportunities at that time to do different things. I wanted to push the fast forward button as much as possible, and I went and got my EMT, and I wanted to start guiding heli skiing as soon as possible. It was super important to me. I started skiing for Nordica, which was owned by Benetton at the time, and they had a really huge program. Scott Mellon, who was the head guy for Marker out here in California at the time, all of a sudden was starting this whole new program, and basically was like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about, the future here and see what you think. And I was like, I'm all about it. Let's do it. So literally started designing clothes and designing skis, and was able all of a sudden to go wherever I wanted in the world and go to France and go to Switzerland and start exploring Europe and figure out the different areas and the different snowpacks and different mountain ranges versus coastal snowpacks. And what sticks to mountains and what doesn't. And then following that, I joined up with Arc'teryx when they were still privately owned Canadian company out of Burnaby, which is just above Vancouver. And those guys were great. And right about that same time, I really was still cutting trees and making money in the summer doing that and trying to do whatever I could to get my Land Cruiser out here and buy a house and build a garage and get my Land Cruiser out here and do a spring over and put ARBs in it and get on Fort Ice Trail and see Rubicon and go to Little Sluice and see what it's all about and go to Cow Rocks and see what you had going on.
That's how we met.
And, just the opportunities with Arc'teryx were just huge because those guys had a totally different approach. They were a true hardcore company that just wanted to let me push the limits as much as I felt like I could do, and just, hey, go do a good job. If you don't, we'll fire you. Okay, great. Here's your whole budget for the year. Do a good job. I'm like, I can work with that. And, basically started filming ski movies with Rage Films at that time. And I think I did 7 or 8 movies with those guys. Right before that, I was helping Kevin Quinn from Points North, which was in Cordova, Alaska, and helped him open the first year and pioneer the area in Cordova there. And there, a few people had come from Valdez and Doug Coombs and Tom Day and a few guys with some snowboarders back in the day had come all the way down to the Copper River. But at that point, like, it was still very, very unknown. And I spent a season there, and basically my sponsors at the time were like, this is great and all, but we really want you to keep traveling. I was like, okay. So went back to doing some more ski movies. Wanted to do some more exploring. Went to Europe a little bit more, and then was in South America and met some Russians. And basically, those guys invited me to come over and be their guests and to come to Kamchatka.
Really?
So I basically pitched a story to Powder Magazine at the time. And back then it was kind of a big deal to get an editorial assignment. And it was basically a photo essay. So it wasn't like they're going to send a writer, but they wanted us to just take pictures and then just write like paragraph blips that you could attach with the picture. And basically the Kamchatka Peninsula, forgive me, it's been a few years, but off the top of my head, I want to say it was a 450 mile long peninsula that has about 75 volcanoes on it.
Wow.
Some are active, some aren't, but basically 8,000 to 10,000 foot vertical ski runs. And a lot of them had never been skied before. And we flew, it was a brutal flight getting over there because at that time you couldn't fly from the West Coast straight over there. So we had to fly all the way to JFK, and then from JFK all the way over Greenland to Moscow. And then from Moscow, get on a Aeroflot, which was Russian airline, and go from Moscow to Petropavlovsk-Kamchatsky, which was their main nuclear sub base in World War II.
Okay.
And it was my friend Jim and I, and the photographer Greg Van Dorstein from Jackson Hole. Jim, he's a great skier. Him and I had teamed up on a bunch of stuff, kind of starting at that point in time, and had like-minded interests and abilities. And we basically flew over there and chartered a Russian heli, an Mi-8, including fuel, and just flew south on the peninsula for like a week and a half. And just pointed at stuff and landed on it and skied whatever we felt like. And it was pretty amazing. The whole time we were there, my friend Artem Zubkov, who was the Russian guy that put this together for us, he has a magazine based out of Moscow called Vertmir. And Artem, super, super interesting individual, had done a lot of skiing in the Tian Shan mountain range, basically the foothills of the Himalaya, all through China. And the Ruble Face and a bunch of really unique things. Early on, he was in Valdez before like a lot of people even heard about it. And the whole time we're there, he keeps telling us, he's like, hey, we need to go to Krasnaya Polania. And I'm like, where? And he goes, Krasnaya. And I was like, okay, well, can we at least finish this trip first before we have to go somewhere else? And he goes, yeah, that's fine. He's like, no, you need to come. You need to come. They're going to put the 5th chair to the Alpine. We need to be there first. We need to be there. We need to be there. I'm like, okay. I'm like, where is it? And he goes, it's you fly into Sochi. I was like, okay. So we come back the next year. We try to pitch another story to Powder, and they're like, you guys were just there. You can't go back. Like, why would you go back to the same area? I'm like, do you realize that country's really big? And they were like, yeah. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So we're going anyway. So it took a different photographer, Christian Pondella, who's a Red Bull photographer from Mammoth, Jim and I, and we flew over there again. And this was easy because you just flew to Moscow and then flew south like a couple hours, which was easy. And we get there, and it was double chairs running on diesel generator power. And they're like, hey, this is an old retired KGB recreation facility. I'm like, really? Okay. And then we get up there, and it's just these beautiful glades of trees, and it was super, super cool. And like these, like kind of like British Columbia, kind of like little spines, mini Alaska, kind of up high in the Alpine, and then like fun chair line, like beautiful trees, kind of Japanish. And we skied there for a month, and then there was a Russian outfit that had helicopters. There was a French outfit that had helicopters, and then Putin had a house right on the hill too. And they're like, hey, when Putin comes, you guys can't ski on the hill. And when he comes and wants to get in the heli, you can't go in the heli. And we're like, yeah, whatever, sure. Yeah, see when it happens, right? So literally, like, we're there, and then they're like, Putin's coming. We're like, yeah, sure he is. And then like 2 days later, like they're like, we're closing off half the ski area. He's going to ski over here. We're like, oh, they're for real. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll heli today then. So we're like, we go out heli skiing, and back then, like, Jim and I loved to jump off huge cliffs, and I jumped off like a 90-footer that day. It was huge, and stomped it, and they were shooting video of it. We get back to the bar that night because you'd finish the day every day in the bar, and it was just such an amazing, welcoming culture, and the people were so nice, and it was pretty remarkable that, I mean, they told us that we were the first Americans ever there. And then we came back the next year because we were like, this place is too cool. And then skied again for a month. And then basically after that, they completed this tunnel because the road getting into this place was like on a cliff above like a Class 5 river. And then they're like, we're going to have the Olympics. And we're like, yeah, sure you will. And then they basically had the Olympics. So it was pretty neat to be there, you know, before anybody, and to see an area and watch it develop, right?
Right. So one of the things that I've noticed in listening to you is that you remember names and places, and, you know, I have no idea if you're pronouncing the names right, but I'm assuming you are. I heard that you have an extremely great memory. And that,
yeah, that's true.
And that flying, like you guys could fly up on a mountain, and as you go up, you'd pick your line that you wanted to you wanted to ski, and you could find that exact line coming back down. Is that just something that's innate, or is it something that you worked on?
I think it definitely evolved. I mean, with skiing, it definitely was something that definitely was able to, I think the right way to put it. I figured out different ways to be able to trigger my memory, and that's been helpful. So like, I figured out that I do have a photographic memory.
That's awesome.
And I'm a little bit learning disabled on other things though. So like, some things are super difficult. Like if you gave me a list and you just read it to me right now, I couldn't repeat it. But like, if I can think about a place and remember a memory, I can tell you every single rock. Like if you're like, hey, if you're going by Let's see here. So say you're going up Big Sluice and you're like going by the pivot rock halfway up. Like I could tell you every single rock that's there. And I know other people can do that too. But like for me, like if I can remember a moment where I was going by a spot or like going by Miller Lake or being in the mountains, like to be able to figure out how to be able to visualize and remember it and then be able to recognize your landmarks. And then for skiing, the biggest part is if you look at something from the bottom, you have to figure out the scale of it and then turn it around the other way in your head when you get to the top and still recognize where your landmarks are and not make mistakes and learn from mistakes, right? So like an easy one as an example is never use a shadow line as a reference because it changes.
Right.
And you're like looking down, you're like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go down the shadow line and then I'm going to go down there and I'm going to go right. Well, the shadow line moves by the time you're like, okay, I'm ready to go.
And there's nothing but rock below you.
Well, the hardest part about steep terrain is it's like looking off the end of the world. It's just like looking off a giant beach ball. Like for whitewater rafting, the same kind of thing where you're dropping down something and all you see is the horizon line. So the steeper the terrain gets, the more so that's the case. And the bigger the scale of something, the more you have to tune into that. Because like you get to Alaska and you're like, hey, I'm going to go down there and I'm going to jump off that air right there. Well, is that air a 10-footer or is it like a 200-footer? And figuring that out for you is like what's important, and being okay with where you can put yourself and knowing your ability and knowing like your limits. And I felt like I've always had a pretty good ability to like know where that limit is and know when I'm pushing too hard and know when I'm not pushing that hard and knowing where that line is.
Yeah, because when you're out skiing like that, especially heli skiing, you're not like, a quick ride to the emergency room.
No, you are going to self-rescue. That's the reality. You are going to self-rescue, and you are the first responders, and you're taking care of each other, and in a professional format where you're taking people out and taking them skiing. You're delivering experience where you're taking people out and matching the terrain to their abilities and reading where they're at throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout their trip, and then trying to do your best to meet their expectations on what is reasonable for them, and then giving them that experience and then bringing them home safe and hopefully giving them some of the best runs of their lives,
Right.
And that's created like lifetime friends that we continue to ski together.
Sweet. So,
and then it kind of translates into off-road racing because reading train at speed is like what it's all about, right? And closing terrain and memorizing the hammers. And now there's a lot of people that have all been down there for a while now, and there's guys from the East Coast that have a lot of experience, and Millers and the Bleilers, and there's guys that have traveled and been doing it for a long time now. And I think all of us now have got a lot of experience at that place. So the pre-running is maybe not as important as it used to be in the past. Or is it more important to show up with the right car that's not, wore out or just broken enough or not broken too much? And, just how you can manage yourself throughout the week so you're ready on game day. That's what it all comes down to these days.
Right. And
are you going to qualify and be in the front? Does it matter? Or are you going to start in the back and have corrected time all day? I mean, Marcos has proved that he can come from 98th or whatever and take a shower in the morning, or I've qualified on pole and seen what it's like to be there. And I purposely qualified about 21st or 23rd last year. And I'll be honest, I kind of enjoy just keeping people guessing on where I'm going to qualify at, because you can be in the front, you can be in the back, you can be in the middle. And I mean, shoot, that one year when I rolled in qualifying, I passed 80 guys in the first lap. I started like 90 something. I think I got 80 guys on the first lap and 16 on lap 2. I moved to physical 4th. And the GoPro footage all corrupted, and we didn't get to watch any of it.
Ugh.
I was so mad.
So I'm of the, I've never raced myself. Okay. I've designed race courses, whether it was Vora or Dirt Riot, of course, the rock crawling events, that kind of stuff. But I've never physically raced myself. But
Didn't you race Jeep Speed, Rich?
nope. I went down and crewed. I drove my Jeep like it was a Jeep Speed out on the Vora courses and my Suburban as well. Sometimes a little too much.
Right.
But the I know everybody goes, "Oh yeah, you got to be out there in the clear air. You want that first spot." Man, I think it'd be better to hunt people down than to worry about being hunted down. I don't know.
I think it's pretty humbling for a lot of people when they get caught and they have a hard time recovering from that.
Right.
And the thing about starting in the way back is the course is so burned in that you really don't have to navigate. It's obvious right in front of you. And I think that gives you a little more relaxation when you might be more stressed out if you're the guy in the front.
Right.
You're trying to make sure that you don't make a mistake.
Yeah, because I can see where those transitions at KOH, between those rock trails, you have all those transition areas, and it's, it's desert racing, but maybe not for very long. Not like the first lap typically is. So, those, and you could, you might pass 2 or 3 canyons that are the wrong ones.
Yep.
And we've seen that in the past where guys turn up the wrong canyon.
No, I did it in 2014, I think it was, or 14. I qualified, Nick and I started door to door, and he's fast as heck down the back of that Baldwin jump area there, going down into Melville, and I think he was doing 110 through those whoops through there, and I just laid in and just like, okay, I'm just gonna do my thing, and I caught him. I think it was in Sunbonnet or before Sunbonnet, I can't remember, but I remember I came up and remember Dave in the driver's meeting saying he was going to pull all the Everyman Challenge signs down before the main, and I went and pre-run, and only thing burned in from the pre-running was the 4400 course. And then after the Everyman Challenge race, that was burned in, and the turn went right instead of left. And I was like, all of a sudden I'm in the front, Nick's behind me, and I missed that turn. And then I came out through all that and went over Fissure Mountain, and I was like, wow, I am in the middle of nowhere. I don't see anybody. And then I came all the way around back to the bottom of Jackhammer, and I remember Gene Mooneyham stopping me and yelling at me and telling me this and that and the other. And then I caught up to you at the bottom of Chocolate Thunder. You were like, hey, you came running over and you're like, hey, dude, you got a problem. And I was like, well, the radio's exploding in my ear, and I'm just going to revert back to what I always say. What would Shannon do? We're going to deal with this at the finish line.
Right.
I got to go.
I remember you looking at me like, what do you want? All you wanted to do is keep laying it down.
Oh, and I think by the time I got to Little Sluice, I was like an hour and 20 minutes ahead of everybody. And at that point, I knew I was going to get a penalty. I didn't think I was going to get disqualified. I thought I was going to get a time penalty. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to push this tempo so hard that hopefully I can make everybody else fold or break or whatever. And I remember getting to Little Sluice, or not the Little Sluice, to the back door. And that's funny. I call it Little Sluice.
I caught that.
But I remember getting to there, and like I didn't even see that guy on the second shelf, and hopped up there, and I definitely wouldn't in retrospect do the same thing I did and jeopardize hurting those guys, but I thought I would stick up on that hillside right there, and it torque rolled left, and I had to run it out and kind of bunny hopped over the guy's winch line, unfortunately, and left out of there and kept driving all the way around, and basically was heading back towards Galloway, and I was blowing bubbles. I mean, I learned a lot of lessons. My GPS was mounted too low. I was at the starting line before taking off, and John Marking from Fox comes over. He's like, "Your GPS is mounted too low," and I was like, "Great, thanks." and then I learned quickly that the GPS was too close to my hand, and with my big hands, when I went into reverse, I'd hit all the buttons on the GPS, making the screen change, and it was a different GPS than I had in my old car. So quickly became an issue where the GPS is on the wrong screen. I learned a valuable lesson about my food that I had with me. I used Gorilla Tape to hold it into the interior, which was too strong. So as I was trying to pull it out, I also learned that you never want to grab your gummy snacks with your race gloves, because then you have gummy sauce on your gloves, and then when you drop your towel and then you rub your visor, and then you have gummy sauce with gloves sticking to it, and then you're trying to eat your gummies, and then all of a sudden the Gorilla Tape rips it all apart, and there's gummies flying everywhere, and you're like, my precious, and then you're absolutely bonking and trying to figure out what you're going to do. And then I got a flat on the way to Galloway, and I was like, this isn't good. And I remember calling over on the radio, and I was like, this isn't good. Front left, had no spare tire then, didn't really have much tools, and I was just running on a winging a prayer. And I was like, well, I'm 30 miles from the finish right now. And that tire blew up on Galloway. And yeah, that thing came apart. And
you drove it on 3, didn't you? For most,
I did.
The rest
drove
of it?
Drove it on 3 for, I think it was 27 miles, and went up that sand dune alternate through the boulders with the car in limp mode, and got to the top of that hill. And I wish I had known. I figured it out later that season that if you just turn the car off, regardless of temperature, the stock ECM would take it out of limp mode, regardless of temperature.
Oh.
So I didn't know that, but I drove from the sand dune alternate all the way back to the finish line in limp mode. I don't think I could go over like 5 miles an hour. I was in like first gear from the sand dune alternate all the way to the finish line. I remember getting to King Hill and trying to like limp the car over that hill, and it was just like, please, come on, just get to the finish line. And then we're getting to the finish line, and Dave came out, and he was just like, you're gonna have some penalties. Did you do this? Yep. Did you do that? Yep. Okay. I think I ended up getting like an hour and 8 or hour and 10 minutes in penalties.
And that pushed you to where?
I think maybe like 8th or something.
Okay.
Yeah, the physical first across the finish line didn't count, but it was what it was.
Right. So there was I'd heard a story one time about, I think it was racing in Hawthorne after I was no longer with
Ooh, that's a good one.
With Vora. Is it one you want to talk about?
No, it's not the greatest moment ever in my life, but okay.
Okay. Well, I set it up. You can talk about it if you wish.
Okay, so basically, rock crawler, not very good coilovers, high roll center. Didn't have it set up very well. It was my first desert race ever. Kevin Yoder invited me to come out there, and I basically was so excited, a little wound up, and hit the first road crossing like right out of the start, and got a huge buck into a bicycle and just was riding the bike. And I don't think they kind of anticipated people wanting to go that hard, like right out of the start. And there wasn't like a speed zone or anything. And I was in a nose wheelie, and I'm like, oh my God, there's an RV. Oh my God, there's a Yukon XL. So Ian Plain, if you remember Ian, he used to be Complain on the Pirate Board back in the day.
Yep.
Early KOH competitor. He was riding with me. And I'm in a nose wheelie, and I'm like, oh, there's lawn chairs. And I gather up some lawn chairs. I gather up a golf cart. And then I'm in a nose wheelie on the brakes, and like stop at a nose wheelie, and then like set the thing down, scuff the side of this Yukon XL, shove the golf cart into the guy's RV door, got his lawn chairs. Ian looks at me, and he's like, I'm like, he's like, I don't think we got a flat. You're good. Hit it. And I was like, seriously? So I backed up and we take
What
off.
would Shannon do? Well, we'll deal with it at the end.
And I was like, well, this isn't good, but we might as well run the race, right? So we ran the race, and that was an interesting one for sure. I ended up paying the guy's deductible and giving them some money and made it right, but it was definitely embarrassing, and definitely learned my lesson that my car needed a little more duty cycle and a little more love to be able to go fast in the desert. But that was definitely setting the hook in me to love racing Vora. I loved Yerington. I loved Hawthorne, and the Hawthorne 250.
Well, it's all part of racing is the learning curve.
Well, I just was dumbfounded that someone was parked that close to the center
racetrack.
line of the racetrack on a turn. So I was like,
Hey,
what are these people parked right here for?
It was Vora, okay? we're not talking, at that time, the highest caliber of racers or spectators.
Yeah, I was convinced I was in San Felipe, just trying to beat Robbie Gordon.
and they were like they were in San Felipe trying to be like the natives. We won't touch the cars. So let's talk. Your skiing is just fascinating. I love that, and maybe we find something to get back to that. But in racing KOH, but people know that are going to listen to this. Most of us know your track record out there and who you've raced for and stuff like that, and what cars you've had. But let's talk about your wood cutting.
Sure.
And your love affair with saws.
Oh yeah.
I understand that you have some really killer saws that and that's why you can put down the amount of wood that you can put down. Besides being in great shape.
I honestly, Rich, I've always tried to, like anything, just really always be using the best equipment, and if something needs to be modified or if it can be better, to do it and to experiment with different things. And my climbing saws have always been super important to me, and the Stihl 200Ts are just like legendary climbing saws. And I have one that's my dad's, and I have another one that's one of my originals from like the early 2000s, and they just don't go bad as long as you take care of them and don't drop them. Like, they're amazing tools. And I'm a huge Husqvarna fan for falling saws.
Right.
I ran a 372 XP forever till a few years back. I finally listened to some mentors that had ran the 390 XP, which is a 90cc power head. And but at that time, still, like, I'd never really run anything that was really, really hot rodded yet, and only had ran like muffler mods and things like that. Well, fast forward to last year, started working for Mountain Enterprises, and Rich, their guy that runs the machine shop in the big shop there, he ported one of my 390 XPs that was a company saw and did an amazing job at it. And then Tom Dines out in Sierraville, he used to be in Sierra City, now he's in Sierraville. He has a Ski-Doo snowmobile shop out there. He's an old-time logger and a great friend. He did 2 of my other 390s and went all in. I mean, just deck the head, intake, exhaust port, polish, and then through board the carburetors. I always run a different size sprocket, so I'm regearing. I do a Stihl chainsaw light bar conversion, so I run a Stihl light bar on a Husqvarna because I think that's the best chainsaw bar. And then basically have a Symington chain grinder, so I run a square grind as well. And it makes a huge difference, like when you're in big trees and like I always equate it to gallons of saw gas you burn a day. If I'm able to, not have to be on a hillside hiking a bunch of hills, and able to get on a bunch of trees. Like I can burn like 3 gallons of saw gas in a week in a day.
Jeez.
And I can tell you exactly how long it takes for me to burn through a tank of gas. I mean, I can burn through a tank of gas in about 25 minutes, 28 minutes. And, you get into some 60 dBH or 70 dBH big trees, it's really a shame right now, the health of the forests right now, just from the amount of fire suppression and the bark beetles that we have right now. It's kind of almost getting to the pandemic kind of phase right now, where there's a lot of big, beautiful trees that are dying really quickly right now. The red fir up on the summit, the white firs at lake level. And, they're definitely hazards, and, preventively taking them down before they get too dead is really the only safe way to mitigate the hazard of getting them on the ground before they deteriorate too far. Then you lose options on how to be able to take them down safely.
Right. And then the use once they're on the ground. I mean, afterwards.
Certain places they're getting utilized and sent to the mill if the access is correct. If they're in some places, there really is no access. So they're definitely like lopped and scattered, and put as low to the ground as possible, and then left in place.
Right. So working the fires, I mean, I've seen some big trees on logging trucks coming down out of these burns. I haven't seen what's coming out of from the Grizzly fire, but the one that ran last year up from Grizzly Flats to Tahoe, the trees that they've been taking down along 50 and Mormon Immigrant Trail have just been, I mean, when you get 3 logs is all you get on a logging truck,
that's big timber for
that
sure.
is big timber. And it's sad to see that stuff all burnt.
It is definitely. And, honestly, Rich, I never really, almost 30 years of cutting trees, mostly all in Tahoe. And, I never really had experience cutting in the Feather River Canyon or anywhere out there. And, I worked out on the Dixie Fire last year, and, I got into some really big stuff that was in really obscure places. So it had never been logged, because, most everything in Tahoe is second growth or third growth now.
Right.
So you're not really seeing the old growth, like, for example, like at Rubicon Springs, when you're coming in from Cadillac and you're coming in on the left-hand side right there, that grove of 220 footers is just what you don't see at the lake anymore, because those trees never were logged because there was no way to get them out of there.
Right.
So they never got logged. So, 8-10 foot white fir is just massive. But when you're on the Dixie, you're at a little bit different elevation, and then you get into the Douglas firs, which are just absolutely massive trees. And it's just a shame when the fire goes through, and oftentimes on the uphill side, you'll get what's called a goose pen or a cat face, where it lights off and burns the side of the tree, creating a hollow spot. And oftentimes on the big ponderosas as well. And, it's just a shame seeing big trees that are just, beautiful, beautiful specimens that can't stay because they're deemed a hazard. A forester comes through, marks them all, and then, hey, this one's above a PG&E hydro plant or above a road that a PG&E employee moves in and out of to check on a hydro project, and it could hit them. So that thing has to come down. So, getting put on a bunch of different projects on that kind of stuff last year. And then we felt really fortunate to be able to come back to Tahoe this year and to be able to work on the West Shore and basically start in South Shore in the spring, and then work through Emerald Bay, through Homewood, through DL Bliss, Sugar Pine State Park, and work all the way to Tahoe City. And then basically from Tahoe City, been working on the transmission line between Tahoe City and Truckee.
Nice.
Which was where I was at today.
Right. And that's home ground, so it's nice to work there.
Yeah, it's just I love working home turf. I love going all throughout all that area, and just the other guys on the cruise with me, it's cool to be able to say, hey guys, this house right here, or that stump right there, or that tree right there, and give people a little history and tell them about when I was doing residential and when I was taking a tree down at this house or at that place. And there's so many houses and trees after 25 plus years of cutting trees up here.
Right. So then you're cutting trees. You're working now for Mountain Enterprises, which is the Gomez brothers, who
Yes,
you
sir.
get to race against at KOH.
Yep.
Did they ever tell you to try to go easy on them?
No, I think those guys love as much competition as possible. And,
Yes.
I love everybody's fire, and I love everybody's passion to beat each other. And I know those guys feel like if anybody's going to win, hopefully it's one of the NorCal guys. So I appreciate that. And last year it was kind of funny. Marcos started like about 30th, I think, and we did some pre-running together on the week before, and we always have a good time together. And I think he started about 30th, and he caught up to me, and I forget what trail we were in, and I pulled over and I was like, go, and then he pulled up and just like had his hands and was waving his hands around like a crazy person. Then he pulled him back behind me, and I was like, all right, whatever. So I started going again, and afterwards he told me, he's like, well, I lost my navigation and all that went to shit, so I just figured I'd let you navigate for me. So we were basically playing cat and mouse for a while, and until he was like, it's time to go, and then he started hammering. But I moved up pretty far, and then I cut a tire going through Chocolate Thunder, and then we got going again. Things were going good. I passed a bunch of people, and then coming around the backside of Aftershock again, things were going good. And then on last lap, I cut a tire going through Hell to Pay, and that trail was so raw and just absolutely violent. I feel like I went through a notch, and then the only line was to like land on like a 5-foot boulder, just take it down the middle of the car, and you're just like, really? And then I cut a tire, and I was like, well, it didn't seem like it was that bad. I mean, I guess that's fair. And then I was like, we changed it, and then I was like, oh wow, we're out of position now to pit till after King's Graveyard, which is like the end of the race.
Right.
So I was like, wow, I need to settle down. I can't get another flat or we're screwed. And after, the previous 2 years, I was like, I need to have a good solid finish, and get a nice top 10 or better. I think I was up to 4th or something. I felt like we were up in the mix pretty good. And that was even without corrected time yet. And I just kind of settled it down, and we went down Sledgehammer, and we were just being careful. James Schofield did the first lap, and he told his wife that he would get out and not stay in for the rocks. And then my friend Jake Capriotti jumped in, which was our plan. We did a scheduled co-driver change, and I was amazed that James wanted to ride again, and I was super pleased and really felt fortunate that he would. And that's our plan going into this year. He's gonna race again with me, and we're gonna go get after it again.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the bear encounter. I mean, everybody's always heard about you fighting the bears with the tomahawk. So
right.
let's hear the story.
So basically, my now ex-wife and I, we just had got done doing a kitchen remodel, which definitely teetered on pushing us over the top. And she left out of town, and we just got done the kitchen remodel where, we spent some money and did a nice job, got all new appliances, got some beautiful custom cabinets. We had some beautiful Sitka spruce floors that we moved to island and finished off the floors, and it was just beautiful. And it was right in the middle of summer in Tahoe. I mean, front doors wide open, and I was out in the garage working on my car, trying to get ready to go down and race Glen Helen. And I was trying to lower the car, and my friend Joe Magliano, Joe the Toe from Reno, he was going to come up and give me a hand, and then he was going to go to a barbecue afterwards. And him and his now wife Carrie came over, and we're in the garage, and he's helping me change springs. I was trying to lower the car down a little bit, and he basically was like, "All right, I'm good. I'm gonna wash my hands. Where's your hand soap?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll walk you inside and show you where it is." So all three of us go walking up the front stairs, and Lel was out of town, and I was in bachelor mode, and I had 2 bags of kettle chips on the coffee table, and I come walking up the stairs, and I look at the coffee table, and I just see the 2 bags of kettle chips just shredded open, laying on the center of the hardwood floor, with just like this huge diarrhea shit and this huge puddle of piss.
Fuck.
And I was like, "Holy shit!" And then I just, like, out of the corner of my left eye, I just see this blur, and then I hear Joe, "Holy shit, that's not a dog." And I was like, "Oh, there's a bear in the house." So I go running into my office, and I just had come home from Alaska from being up there for the spring, and I had 2 pistols I took up there that were all empty and barrel locked from flying home TSA'd. And I basically looked at them, and I was like, "Oh wow, my 2 pistols are empty and locked. So I'm going to go down in history right now as the guy that gets mauled looking for his pistol keys and trying to load his frickin' handgun while I get mauled." And I was like, "This is unacceptable." So, I think it was a year before that, I kind of started collecting tomahawks, because they're amazing tools, and I'd carry one in my guide pack all the time. So if we were flying down into the trees, down into the riverbeds, a lot of times you couldn't fit the A-Star into an area and make the helicopter fit for rotor clearance and tail rotor clearance. So I would chop down willows and garbage, cottonwoods and bushes and whatever, and just make it so the aircraft could fit. So I had my SOG Fusion, which was like the cheap SOG Fusion at the time, and that thing was sitting against my filing cabinet. And I was like, "Well, there's a bear in my house, and my guns are unloaded, and I'm an asshole." So I grabbed my tomahawk, and I come out of my office, and in the meantime, Joe had run out the front door and slammed the door shut with me in there. and then I hear him, "Do you want me to open the door?" And I was like, "Yes." And I was livid pissed, because like I think I spent like $18,000 on these custom cabinets, and with the soft close, like, and everything, and they were just amazing looking, right? And I was like, and I was like, braiding fridge, the freezer's tore open. I mean, the new cabinet, all of it, just furious. So I come out of my office, and the bear in the meantime had run into the bedroom. Now the front door's open, but he goes into the bedroom, comes running out of the bedroom, jumps off the corner of the couch, off the coffee table, and charges me. And I was like, "Oh snap. Okay, so game on." So I'm blocking the doorway to the guest bedroom, guest bathroom in my office, right? Come to learn later, the bear had decided not to go in the wide open front door of the house, but walk around the back of the house, tear the screen window off the guest bedroom, and crawl through that window.
So he was heading that way.
He was trying to leave the way he came in, which I didn't realize, because why would you like rip a freaking window open when you could just walk in a wide open front door? But little did I know that. Anyway, I was in fear of my life. I was mad. I wanted a piece of him, and he's charging me. So the SOG Fusion's only like 12 or 14 inches long, and he charges me. And I waited until he was like almost on me, and then I hit him with a blade strike right across the side of the temple, like right across the side of the head, as hard as I could. And Joe's describes it as just like the sound of steel on bone, and the sound of that, he was like, it was just undeniable. And then I go chasing him like a crazy person, running after him, chasing him out the front door, and his head's down, and he's just running. And I throw it at him, bounce it off of him, and I remember Joe just looking at me, and he's like, "Oh, I'm taking off to that barbecue," and he just looks at me, he's like, "That just happened, pow!" And I was like, or boom, I forget what he said, but I was definitely like, okay. So then I called Placer County, and I was nervous because the Bear League up here is very, very liberal political, and they want to put everybody on public blast that does any kind of a bear encounter. I didn't want to shoot the bear and then have to deal with the public outlash. So luckily he didn't come back, and I spent the next like 2 nights on the roof with a compound bow and didn't get a shot at him. And I was definitely mad, to say the least, but I was thankful that I wasn't hurt. And he went away, and there was a bunch of teeth marks on all my new cabinets.
So is that an extra policy in your insurance?
I don't know. But
that's like one of those riders, oh, do you live in a floodplain? You can't get flood insurance. You live in a bear habitat?
It should be up here now. Honestly, they're terrible. I mean,
yes.
I remember, everybody doesn't really realize how bad it is in certain neighborhoods up here. Like, there's people that don't have a screen window on their first floor house, on the first story of their house up here, because the bears just open sliders, open cars, terrorize, rip out the interior, break into houses. I mean, they're multi-generational trash bears now that are really like giant raccoons with no fear.
Right. and then you got all the lovely liberal greenies, oh, save the poor bear.
You're in their habitat. You're in their world.
There's lots of forest for them to go play in.
Yep.
But there's no picnic baskets over there.
Yeah, no, and I mean, like, there's stories now of a bear that goes into 7-Eleven right at the bottom of Olympic Valley there, and he'll walk right in and help himself to the ho-hos and the cupcakes, and grabs a few and heads right back out.
So almost like the bum rush thievery or whatever that's happening in the big cities.
Right.
Yeah. God. And it's bears.
Yep.
So what's on the agenda for Tom coming up in the future?
Racing KOH. Hoping to have a nice solid year, working with Icon and BF Goodrich and FK Rod Ends, and pretty much all the same characters. James is a huge part of my program. He does a tremendous amount on my motor program and the ring and pinion program. And my friend Colt, he's amazing help. All my guys that come every year, they're just a huge part of my program. It's nice because there's not a lot of change in the program, and everyone's involved and kind of knows their task. And it's I'm looking forward to it. I always look forward to KOH. I really enjoy it. Jason Shear, great friend. I love him to death. Berger, all the key players, and everybody's got a different motivation why they like to race hammers. But I think all of us love to be competitive and race each other and see who can bring their best A game on race day. And, going to definitely keep cutting trees as late as I can into the winter here. And then get ready for the lake bed, and then basically March and April, hoping to be up in Alaska with my good friends and be able to get some great runs. Last spring was amazing. I was super thankful to be able to be up there, and we had 4 weeks of just great conditions. The wind picked up at the very end, but it was just super special. We got to ski some stuff that hasn't been skied since like 2011. Which was neat. It was really neat. So looking forward to getting back at it.
Cool.
Picking up cutting trees in the spring.
And one last thing, you're a Raptor owner, Gen 1 or Gen 2?
I'm a Gen 1 guy for sure. I've got a 2011 that was Icon's R&D truck, basically, one of the owners, and Dylan Evans's truck that he did all the testing for all the different kits and the leaf springs and everything. That thing has got a lot of stories. A lot of people have driven it. And, I got it with 92,000 miles on it, and it's pretty much got the billet upper control arm kit, 37 KM3s, Pro M bead locks. We did some tranny cooler upgrades, HAL power steering kit on it. It's got the billet cross member hydraulic bump stop kit in the back, Icon leafs in the back, the 3042 bypass in the rear with reservoirs, and 30 IBP with clickers in the front. And I've driven the truck 173,000 miles now.
Nice.
And had it in Baja multiple times doing XO runs with the Raptor runs. I've driven it to Alaska and back to go guide. And I mean, I just love average speed, and to be able to tell you my miles per gallon from Reno to Haines, Alaska, it was 3,075 miles. And I think I averaged over 75 miles an hour the whole way in the middle of winter in the snow. They're great trucks. I'm absolutely a huge fan of them. They just roll out with 488s, 37s at 90, 100 mile an hour, just lays right out. And I just got another one, 2013, 2 weeks ago. Terrain tan factory truck. It's got high miles on it, but James Schofield is building me a forged motor that I had on order, so I'm gonna have some options to be able to throw a motor in either of the trucks, really, to be honest, and basically have a Sunday truck, and then have the 2011 is. I mean, James was blown away. He flew out last year. He drove it down while I towed the race trailer with the race car in it and the dually, and we put new tires on it before the Hammers, and drive down to the Hammers, put everybody in it, go pre-run the desert, drive around the pits all week long, drive over to BFG, pick up bead locks that you're getting mounted, bring them back to the pits, and then run it all week long, 2 weeks worth, and then drive it all the way back home again, and then load it up with chainsaws and take it to work.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big Raptor fan. I've got a 12, and it's pretty much still stock, but that's hopefully going to change now that I'm retiring from the competition end of off-road events.
Yep.
Not having to put on the boots on the ground at the rock crawls. I'm going to start doing some social runs, taking people on places that they will never see on their own. So all over Nevada and some places in California, do some Raptor runs myself. And so I'd like to talk to you about picking your brain on some of the stuff on those kind of things. And
I've got a bunch of tracks in Gaia that I'm more than happy to share with you, Rich.
Cool.
I mean, I've definitely I've got my favorites. I mean, the Immigrant Trail is definitely one of my favorites, and running from Susanville, from Honey Lake back to Gerlach, through Smoke Pass and everything, like that to me is like, that's special in there. And then continuing it from the Dry Lake bed and running it all the way to Lovelock through Porter Spring and Seven Trout, it's really a beautiful section as well. And then running from the High Rock, Black Rock, kind of divergence right there, and really seeing how big the Black Rock Desert really is, and then running that all the way up past almost to the Sheldon, and then I went all the way up to the Alford to Jesse's spot, and check that out as well.
Cool.
But,
I'd love to get that Gaia from you. That's kind of what I want to do. Is we've been working the Rebel Rally for the last 7 years, and just got back, and I've got a lot of track in Nevada on Gaia now that I can lace together and take people places, like I said, that they will never see if they stay on the pavement. So
well, I'm glad
really
you got
cool
to
stuff.
help out Emily with that, and you got to experience Chris Wu.
Yes.
And Wu is one of my huge parts of my program. Woo is my ninja, and he's a huge part of it as well.
And so now you know where I got my information or things to ask.
Yeah.
Awesome. So
Very cool.
let's talk again. It's been way too long, and thank you so much for coming on board and discussing your life and your passions and your interests. And I think all your interests are actually passions, which is even better. So, Tom, thank you for God, I've known you now, at least it's good 20 years, close to that, it seems.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
I've really appreciated, knowing you, and hope to get to know you even better.
I appreciate everything you do for the off-road community, Rich, and thanks for having me on.
All right. You take care.
All right. Cheers.
Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.